I'm with you wherever you go with MetroFocus, the podcast. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Or simply ask your smart speaker to play MetroFocus, the podcast. Also available at metrofocus.org, WLIW.org/radio, and on the NPR One app.
Metro Focus is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wackenheim III, Philemon M. D'Agostino Foundation, the Peter G. Peterson and Joan Gans Cooney Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, and by Jody and John Arnhold, Dr. Robert C. and Tina Sohn Foundation, the Ambrose Monell Foundation, Estate of Roland Carlin.
This is Gianna Volpe, and you're listening to WLIW-FM, Long Island's only NPR station.
This is Asian View from NHK World Japan. I'm Yoshio Gasawara. Japan's Prime Minister and the U.S. Defense Secretary say they'll further strengthen the alliance between the two countries. Kishida Fumio and Lloyd Austin made that pledge when they met in Tokyo on Thursday. They also discussed North Korea's failed launch of a spy satellite. Kishida said the security situation in the region is increasingly severe.
We want to work with the United States to secure peace and stability in the region by strengthening the deterrence and response capabilities of the Japan-U.S. alliance.
Austin said the U.S. fully supports moves by Japan to update its national security and defense strategies. He said they're an important part of the G7's efforts to strengthen the rule-based international order. South Korean defense officials say they've successfully tested a homegrown interceptor that can shoot down a ballistic missile. This comes amid increasing security threats from North Korea. The officials say the long-range surface-to-air interceptor can hit incoming ballistic missiles at an altitude of 30 to 38 miles. That compares to 25 miles for the U.S.-made Patriot system that South Korea now uses. Seoul plans to complete development of the new system by next year and start deploying it later this decade. The U.S. hopes streamlined customs procedures will boost trade with Taiwan. Officials from Washington and Taipei say the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade will allow businesses from both sides to ship their products more quickly and cheaply. Small and medium-sized companies will receive financial support with the aim of opening up investment opportunities. We're broadcasting from NHK in Tokyo.
I'm Kai Rizdal. You're listening to 88.3 WLIW-FM and WLIW.org/radio, Long Island's only NPR station.
Marketplace is supported by McDermott, Will & Emery, lawyers committed to helping innovative entrepreneurs of color launch and scale their businesses. More at mcdermottrise.mwe.com.
3 guesses what we're going to talk about today, and the first 2 do not count. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden, a password manager for businesses designed to securely store, share, and manage credentials for employees. Learn more at bitwarden.com. And by BuySide from the Wall Street Journal, an independent commerce site designed to help consumers make smart decisions with their time and money. WSJ.com/BuySide.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Friday today, the second day of June. Good as always to have you along, everybody. We got the jobs report this morning. We got a debt limit deal, and we've got 7.5 maybe minutes to make it all make sense. Sudeep Reddy is at Politico. Neela Richardson is at ADP. Hey, you two.
Hey, Kai.
Hi, Kai.
So, Neela, let me start with you. The jobs report, of course, 339,000 new jobs in this economy last month. The unemployment rate bumps to 3.7%. First of all, when you read the news this morning at 8:30, whatever it was, Washington time, what was your gut reaction?
My gut reaction was this was a strong report, and it was lined up with all the other numbers we saw for that week. This week with the ADP numbers, private sector 278 compared to BLS 283. We saw the JOLTS number showing some more demand from companies with stronger job openings, still very low initial layoffs in terms of the initial jobless claims. So all the numbers added up to a very strong jobs report today.
Sudeep, I'm going to give you the however comma because unemployment rate going up 0.3%, that's not nothing.
Yeah, there was a moment when you see this. Obviously, seeing the payroll numbers be so high on the surface, but you start to wonder. We always have to be prepared at a moment like this in the economy to ask: is this some kind of turning point? When the numbers start looking contradictory in different ways, that's usually when that happens. Is it a turning point? I don't know that this is it, but it does. It's one of those flags that goes up just a bit to say, well, maybe there's something here, or it could just be a fluke in the numbers and it'll be revised a month from now, and we can have a different battle.
That's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Neela. Because I didn't have turning point on my bingo card for this discussion today. Neela, go ahead.
I came armed with a couple little known facts about the unemployment rate.
Okay.
You know that since 1970, there's only been 27 months where the unemployment rate was 3.7% or lower, and only 2 months where it's hit at 3.4%, where it was last month.
Right.
And both of those 2 months were this year. So only less than 5% of the time have we seen the unemployment rate this low. And I think that's really telling about the labor market right now. Yes, it's really fragmented. There are some sectors like manufacturing not doing so well right now with higher interest rates. But overall, there's a lot of health and strength, even if the unemployment rate goes up a little bit.
Fair enough, and I appreciate you pointing that out because that's relevant, right? Since 1970 is a long time ago. Let me ask you this, though, Neela, about wages, because that is your thing as a labor economist. You keep a really close eye on wages. Wage growth, while still growing, it's not as robust as it was, and in point of fact, is slowing a little bit.
It is slowing a little bit. We're seeing that in the ADP payroll data. We saw that a little bit in the government official stats today. And what's really meaningful about that is that wage growth had been moving sideways towards the end of it last year and into this year. So we hadn't seen a deceleration in wage growth. We're finally starting to see consistent slowdown in wage growth. And while that doesn't sound like great news to people who work for a living, it is good news to a Fed that's worried that wages are going to lead to higher inflation. And so that's the lens in which they're going to look at that number.
Right. Perfect segue, because Sudeep, my next question to you is Jay Powell gets this number yesterday afternoon and he says what?
Skip. This is the term at the Fed, right? They're now not even talking about pausing, but maybe just skipping and waiting till the next meeting to see if they're going to do anything. In a moment of uncertainty about what the numbers mean, they're most likely to just not take any action. Interest rates are high. They don't get a whole lot by raising them another quarter point right now, and so they just want to buy a little bit of time, see if they can avoid pummeling the economy too much. If wage growth is slowing, if the unemployment rate is rising anyway, if these things are happening, then they don't need to cause tremendous trauma along the way beyond what they've already done.
Do you not think, though, Neela, and with the stipulation that Jay Powell, of course, wants everybody in this economy who wants to have a job, doesn't he look at this and say, what does a guy have to do?
Yeah. I mean, they're in a real conundrum because as strong as I think the labor market numbers are right now, even I don't think that they are consistent with 2% inflation.
Yeah.
So the question is, can you get to 2% with unemployment rate below 4%? It's likely not going to happen. And so that's what the Fed is going to have to struggle with. How do you do that? How do you pull off that target going forward?
Yeah. All right. Change of topic. Topic number 2 today, the debt limit, of course. Sudeep, there is a deal. It was not a deal that was forced by the markets. And I just want to play you from a couple of weeks ago-ish now when I asked you what it was going to take to get this deal done. And here's what you said.
I still think there's going to be a solution. There are really only two options in my mind. Does this require a minor market freakout or does it require a major market freakout?
Weird to hear yourself on the radio, right? Anyway.
It really is.
I know. I believe you me, I know. But look.
You sounded great.
There was no market freakout. Yes, the bond market reacted a little bit, but generally speaking, the markets gave Washington a pass this time when it seemed peril was closer than ever, and I don't get that.
There was a moment, I think it was the Wednesday before the big deal, where people are like, and the market's starting to recognize this, market's starting to freak out. And you're like, didn't really look like it was like a little blip on the screen when you saw it. So I guess that might be the minor one. But I think they all realized that nobody wins in a hostage-taking scenario. If you think about it, the hostages don't win, the hostage takers don't win, the negotiators don't really feel good. Nobody feels good in the end, and they're just happy it's over. I think that's how most people feel about this. They're just happy it's over. No one was going to win in this case, and I would like to think maybe everyone's learned a lesson and that it's just not worth playing with it. But we're going to have a whole different cast of characters 2 years from now, a whole different cast.
Yeah, well, so look, so this thing comes due on, it expires, the deal expires January 1, 2025. So there's going to be a lame duck Congress. Who knows who's going to be in the White House? So we are going to do this all over again. My question is, do you think there is any, setting aside for a minute whatever the numbers are in Congress and the Senate and the filibuster, do you think there's any appetite at all for a serious conversation about getting rid of the debt limit?
I think that's going to require 60 votes in the Senate and a majority in the House, and then a lot of things could happen then. I just think everyone's getting tired. Not everyone. A lot of people are getting tired of this whole fight, and so the value of the debt ceiling as a tool to hang over heads is actually diminishing just a little bit, and so we might get closer to that point, but a lot of things need to happen in each party's view if they get 60 votes. And so this is probably on the top 10 list for Democrats for sure.
Sudeep Reddy at Politico, Neil Richardson at ADP. Thanks, you two.
Thanks, Kai.
Thank you, Kai.
On a Friday, lots to talk about. Not enough time. Wall Street today, I mean, they were pretty happy. Music to follow. Another slice of this morning's jobs report that's really worth a mention here is that the labor force participation rate for women of prime working age, that is the Labor Department's phrasing, not mine, to be clear. Anyway, labor force participation for women in their mid-20s to their mid-50s has hit an all-time high. And if you think back to those early months of the pandemic when so many women, moms especially, were forced to leave the labor force or just lost their jobs, and the concern back then that we all had that it would take years for those women to find their way back to the workforce, well, today's news is a big deal. Marketplace's Samantha Fields is on it.
Two big things happened when COVID hit that drove millions of women from the workforce.
First, the service sector collapsed and women are disproportionately employed in the service sector.
And Lauren Bauer at the Brookings Institution says when schools and childcare centers closed,
women with children were forced to make hard decisions.
And more women than men left their jobs to take care of kids. But Rose Qatar at the Center for American Progress says since schools and the economy reopened,
we have seen women's employment slowly but surely recovering.
And now reaching this record high. She says there are two main factors driving this recovery.
The labor market is really strong and tight, which means, employers are kind of competing to get workers.
Which has benefited women, she says, especially in the service sector. And for women who work in fields where remote work is an option, mainly college-educated women,
flexibility has obviously played a huge role in that. It's allowed women who have the opportunity to be able to work from home and potentially also provide caregiving responsibilities that they still would have to do regardless.
The speed with which women have returned to the workforce has surprised a lot of experts. And it's good news, says Jasmine Tucker at the National Women's Law Center. But
we know that the economy was not working for a lot of people in February 2020, and especially those who are in these low-paid jobs without benefits.
And she says that's still the case today, especially for women. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
Prime age labor force, as I just mentioned, is 25 to 54. That's for men and women. But we're going to hear from somebody now in the barely pre-prime cohort from the college class of 2023, the second installment of our mini-series within our series, My Economy, looking at how some new graduates are feeling about entering the workforce.
My name is Tyree White. I am from Fort Worth, Texas. I recently graduated from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. After graduation, I'll be moving to Lufkin, Texas, to be a multimedia journalist at KTRE. You know, I run into a lot of student journalists. They tell me, yeah, we were doing journalism in high school, and I always knew I wanted to be a journalist. And for me, I'm like, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no real interest in journalism while I was in high school. But while in school, I worked at McDonald's. And so there, I was a order taker, which means I would speak over the intercom in the drive-thru. Welcome to McDonald's, what can I get for you? Things like that. And they would always tell me like, wow, you have a great voice. Do you do radio? I'm like, no, I don't do radio. I'm just a high school student. This is my only job. And so I would hear it all the time. And I never thought much of it at the time. So I never really expected such a high salary doing broadcast journalism. So I stayed realistic early on, and I'm just thankful to have my foot in the door right now. I think I can say that. My next goal was to find a place to stay out in Lufkin, find an apartment or something, just, a roof over my head. And so 6 months from now, I plan to, be living on my own, just starting my career, learning the ropes, and just trying to get acclimated with the world of news. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. Like, I think the next 6 months, I'm going to be a super sponge and just soaking up everything, trying to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can, trying to grow as much as I can, and just trying to be the best that I can be.
Tyree White in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, soon to be out of Lufkin, Texas. So look, if you've got a voice for radio, or even if you don't, let us know how things are going, would you? Marketplace.org/myeconomy. Coming up.
Maybe I just don't even need a vehicle.
In California? Yeah, no. First, though, let's do the numbers. Told you it was going to be the happy music, didn't I? Dow Industrial shot up 701 points, 2.1%, closed at 33,762. The NASDAQ gained 139 points, almost 1.1%, finished at 13,240. The S&P 500 lifted 61 points, 1.4%, ended at 42.82. You're looking for the proximate cause here? I would say, just like Sudeep pointed out, good chance of a skip at the meeting from the Fed, July 13, 14. We'll see. For the Dow, for the week rather, the Dow and the NASDAQ both added just over 2% today. The S&P 500 rose 1.8%. We heard from Samantha Fields that per today's jobs report, numbers of women in the labor force are at an all-time high, with gains in the service and business sectors. Uniform maker Cintas put on 1.1%. Accenture found 2%. JP Morgan Chase has been responding to customers who woke up to duplicate transactions from Zelle on their accounts. In some cases, overdrafts and fees. Not great. Chase, which says it is, of course, working to resolve the issue, rose 2.1%. Bank of America was up 3.3%. Lest you miss it, today is National Donut Day. It's not a donut chain thing, though. The Salvation Army declared this day of donut eating in 1938. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Raymond James, a firm focused on transforming lives, businesses, and communities through tailored wealth management, banking, and capital markets solutions. Learn more at raymondjames.com. And by Financially Inclined, a new podcast from Marketplace makes learning about money simple so you can make the most of your life. Listen to Financially Inclined wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Ed German. Join me on Friday nights for Friday Night Soul here on 88.3 FM WLIW and WLIW.org/radio for the best in soul, Latin soul, disco, and old school hip-hop. That's Friday at 8 p.m. at 88.3 WLIW FM and WLIW.org/radio, Long Island's only NPR station.
You know that song you heard on Marketplace, the one you really liked? It's an earworm, isn't it? Don't you wish you knew what it was? We've got the whole list of the music we play on the show at our website, marketplace.org/music.
Marketplace keeps you up to speed on the day's biggest economic news. We're on a mission to raise the economic intelligence of the country. Head to marketplace.org to discover more great podcasts that examine our financial realities. From This Is Uncomfortable, which explores life and how money messes with it, to Million Bazillion, a kids podcast that helps dollars make more sense. Subscribe now.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. The deal on the debt limit, the actual legislative text, as it were, is a relatively brief 99 pages. But as Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports, the road ahead could be long and complicated.
Treasury will start issuing new debt to fund the government pretty much right away. The deal also sets a firm deadline for federal student loan payments to restart by late summer. Looking a little further out, federal agencies will have to issue guidance on other elements of the deal, including new requirements for SNAP benefits. Indi Dattagupta is president of the Center for Law and Social Policy.
As soon as September 1, or 90 days after enactment, folks who are 50 years old would actually be newly subject to a work report requirement.
Meanwhile, Congress will have to turn the broad spending limits in the deal into actual appropriations bills for the next fiscal year, with actual numbers, like how much funding will the Department of Education get to start collecting student loan payments again, and what exactly can lawmakers cut from the IRS budget, all while the clock is ticking. Danny Weiss is a senior fellow at the Century Foundation.
Hopefully, we will not run into a shutdown showdown in September or October, but it's not completely out of the question that we might face that situation.
And if lawmakers don't hammer out their disagreements by January, the deal will trigger 1% across-the-board cuts. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
From the Census Bureau this week came an update on construction spending in April. Overall, builders spent a bit more than they did in March and about 7% more than they did in the same time period a year ago. Residential multifamily construction, which is to say apartment buildings and the like, was up 25% year on year. That is a much rosier picture than spending on single-family homes, which went the other way. But with interest rates where they are, high, and construction costs up there as well, that is not going to last forever. Marketplace's Henry Epp has that one.
Multifamily housing projects are driving business these days for Brian Murphy, president of the carpentry firm BAM Contracting in St. Louis.
We have a large backlog, certainly through the end of the year.
Murphy says he's seen huge demand for apartment complexes in his main markets of St. Louis and Kansas City over the past decade, though things are shifting slightly.
I think we're seeing a little bit of leveling off, but it's leveling off at a high rate. You know what I'm saying?
The construction business is still good because it often takes 2 years or more to develop an apartment building. So a lot of the boom in apartment construction we're seeing now was financed before the Fed started hiking interest rates. Now with higher rates and tighter credit conditions, the outlook for new projects is a lot cloudier for developers like Nathan DeGesse with EIV Technical Services in Vermont.
I would say that market rate multifamily housing is going to really struggle to get off the ground moving forward.
And yet it's those same high interest rates resulting in high mortgage rates that are making single-family homes less affordable, says Aaron Jodka, Director of Research for U.S. Capital Markets at Colliers.
The high cost of housing is also keeping a lot of folks in the rental market or pushing them to the rental market.
Plus, Jodka says there are just a lot of people in the prime rental demographic right now.
We've got some millennials in there. You've got some Gen Z in there.
Their demand for new rental units isn't going away, he says, even though there may be fewer apartment buildings to meet their needs. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
True story. A month or two ago, the police blotter in my local paper had an item about a guy who'd had his catalytic converter stolen 5 times, which explains how I wound up taking my car to the dealer a couple of weeks ago, getting a shield put on my catalytic converter. It's the rare metals inside that are valuable, and thefts, it is fair to say, are rampant, especially, says the National Insurance Crime Bureau here in California, leaving drivers without their cars for months. From KCRW, Megan Jamerson reports.
A Toyota Prius normally sounds kind of quiet, like a spaceship. But when this one recently arrived at a muffler shop in LA, it sounded like this. That's because it had its catalytic converter stolen. Hybrid vehicles are a top target for thieves because their converters contain more precious metals.
It's getting crazy. We're super busy.
Dan Luna owns the muffler shop because every car has a catalytic converter. Everything from family sedans to pickup trucks show up at Luna's shop. And he has bad news for these customers who need a replacement converter.
These are back order now, over a month now. Sometimes a month to 6 months.
The supply chain crisis has a lot to do with that, but it's also worse because of the sheer number of stolen converters. Put data on thefts from the National Insurance Crime Bureau on a bar graph, and it's a J-curve. Nationwide, thefts increased by more than 4,000% since 2018. Some states are trying to address this with new laws, restricting who can recycle catalytic converters, increasing fines and jail time for thieves. And Congress has talked about requiring automakers to etch a VIN code onto catalytic converters to make it easier to trace stolen parts. But that idea has stalled.
We have no recourse to protect our vehicles.
That's Carrie Lederer. She lives west of Los Angeles. The first time Lederer had her catalytic converter stolen in 2020, insurance didn't cover the part for her 2008 Prius.
What do? I mean, really, we're between a rock and a hard place.
She paid $3,000 for a replacement and another $500 for a shield to protect the new catalytic converter. It was supposed to slow thieves down. But this year, her converter was stolen again. Twice, actually. And each time, she had to fork out a $500 deductible. Most recently, she was without the car for around 3 months while she waited for the part. She used her bike to get around.
I'm seriously considering, maybe I just don't even need a vehicle because I sure as heck don't want to spend $500 every 2 weeks.
Insurance companies are tired of this spending too, says Amy Harris. She's with State Farm.
It's something that we were hoping we would start to kind of see trend downwards.
In 2021, State Farm paid out more than $73 million in claims nationally. In 2022, it jumped to $112 million.
But, at this point, we keep looking at the data and the numbers, and it's just shocking to see.
More than a quarter of claims come from California, the most of any state. Harris says each of these thousands of claims represents somebody suddenly having to get by without a car.
So some people just really can't make that work between, work and family and things going on. It's a huge inconvenience for everybody.
The number one piece of advice to prevent theft is to park in a secure garage. Not really an option for most people living in large cities. And cars parked on the street become a target for quick cash, says LA County Sheriff's Captain Martin Rodriguez.
Illegitimate recyclers, the people who are buying these, they're paying $950 for certain catalytic converters.
And he says as long as there is a market for these precious metals inside catalytic converters, thieves will continue to steal them. In Los Angeles, I'm Megan Jamerson for Marketplace.
This final note on the way out today, an update to the interview we did this past Tuesday with Michelle Holder. She's a labor economist at John Jay College about the unemployment rate for Black Americans. In April, it was a record low, 4.7%. And the difference between the Black unemployment rate and the white unemployment rate was also at a record low. In May, though, things went in the wrong direction. Black unemployment spiked to 5.6%.
Marketplace is supported by Amazon Business, helping provide a smarter, easier way to get the supplies businesses need to thrive. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying. And by Invest Puerto Rico, the new nesting place for emerging companies, visionary entrepreneurs, and innovative technologies. More info at investpr.org.
Here is your moment of context as we leave you on a Friday in which our long national nightmare of the debt limit debacle continues. Sure, there's a deal, and yes, the president has decided it's time for an Oval Office address, but as with so many things in this economy, the market is going to have the last word. Fitch, the credit ratings agency that last week put the United States on negative watch for its credit rating as debt limit negotiations wound on, well, they said today they are going to keep that negative watch until at least September. Sure, there's a deal, but they said an otherwise strong economy is being hurt by, and this is a quote, a steady deterioration in governance over the past 15 years. I'm going to let that sit there for a minute, and then I'm going to say it again because I got the time. A steady deterioration in governance over the past 15 years. Our theme music was composed by B.J. Liederman. Marketplace's executive producer is Nancy Fargali. Donna Tam is the executive editor. Neil Scarborough is vice president and general manager. I'm Kai Ryssdal. We will see you on Monday. Everybody have yourselves a great weekend, all right? This is APM.
Connect with Long Island's